All right. Hello and welcome to the Meeting Your Soul podcast. I'm Farah and I am delighted to have Ashley on the pod today, who is a somatic psychotherapist and a licensed mental health counselor and also a fellow yoga instructor. And we actually met on our mats out at Audrey's house over, I think it was in Maple Valley. And we ended up just like clicking and just having great conversation and just really getting along, and then have continued to cross paths over the years. So I am delighted to have you on the pod, and I am jazzed to see where this conversation takes us, which we'll be diving a lot into boundaries and kind of Ashley's history and her story, but we'll see where else we journey down. So thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, friend. I'm excited to be here.
I know, me too. It should be fun. We'll keep it on the I we were just talking about this before we started. I am a big believer in like allowing the conversation to flow in whatever direction it does. And for us to be as vulnerable and honest with the audience as possible, because I think that that's what really resonates and just sits with people and what they remember. So I appreciate you being willing to come and do this with me.
It's my pleasure.
I know. How's your day been?
It's been really good. I've just been kind of bouncing between Zoom meetings and hanging out with my puppy, and you might hear her at some point, but right now she's napping and in a good space.
And so you do telehealth session, or do you like counseling session?
I do telehealth as well as in person. So some days I'm in the office, some days I'm at my home office, and yeah.
Aw. How would you say they differ in like the sessions, or do you feel like it is pretty similar?
I mean, I have personal preference. I love in person just because I think there's something so profound about the here and now, the presence that you get to bear witness to. But I also think Zoom has such value too. People can be in their own spaces, the comfort of their own environment. Sometimes people get really vulnerable in that space too. So
yeah,
nothing is hindered by that, but there are studies that have shown different parts of the brain light up when you meet in person versus if you're meeting via Zoom. Yeah, so it's pretty fascinating.
it's fascinating because during COVID, I feel like that's become almost like, because I had a therapist for a while and we only met Zoom. I don't think I ever actually met her in person, and I never felt like it was took away from the experience in any way. But that's kind of interesting to hear that there was actually like a portion, our bodies are actually and our brains are not responding the same way we would be otherwise.
And there's certain things that you see that you won't kind of pick up on Zoom, like someone's tapping or maybe some nervous energy that you're picking up of body language, or just like little things like that you won't be able to fully see by just a floating head.
Well, and it's also, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you have like more of an empathic nature to you in general. So I think also when you're able to be in there someone's space and energy, it's like you get those kind of intuitive pings too, which
Absolutely.
can help
you.
I love
think
that.
both have their value, but I think that's why I like to offer a blend, because sometimes people really appreciate the convenience of Zoom if they don't want to fight traffic or have kids to pick up and a job to kind of rush to, and you can still be doing that inner work while you have a busy life, and then have the option of like once a month come in person, so you're still getting kind of best of both worlds.
Totally. It could be a hybrid. And
yeah,
you brought up a good point, because sometimes when someone's in their own space, especially people that might feel more introverted or already therapy can already be such a vulnerable experience in general, to be at least in their own space and feel safe in that, they might be more willing to like kind of share what they're going through because of the environment they're in, feels more comfortable. So
yeah, especially if you're talking about something that's maybe tender or traumatic. Sometimes having that cocoon of your own environment can be really soothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, that wasn't supposed to be one of our questions that we were going to talk about. I was like, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on this, because I've always, and I've talked to different counselors and mental health, and everyone's had different opinions on it. So I was just curious to hear what your thoughts were. But and that actually is a great segue into what kind of more formally that I wanted to kind of dive into is kind of what prompted you to become a mental health counselor, and like what brought you to that world.
So a couple of things brought me into it. I used to be a dancer. I still am a dancer, but I think I was doing it a lot more focused. I was doing classical ballet and lots of other different styles.
Yeah.
And I lived in Guam with my family for many, many years.
Mm.
And my folks did international development work. And so they started a couple of recovery centers. So one for substance addiction and then one for domestic violence advocacy work.
Wow.
And so I was kind of immersed in that as a kid. And yeah, I think it gave me a lot of perspective for one, people's stories and just diversity of experiences, and
Absolutely.
kind of grew a capacity for empathy. And I think when I was my whole world was dance for many years, and there were times when I felt like there was a longing for more of the heart connection piece, or just I would start to nerd out and kind of think about, other things, that how the brain works and how people work with each other and interpersonal connections. That was really intriguing to me. And growing up cross-culturally, I think I had just a lot of curiosity to how people think. So yeah.
Well, I think living there and like living in another country, which were you born in Guam, or did you
No, I was born in the States. I moved away when I was 1. So I lived in Philippines for a couple of years, and then I was also living in Kiribati. Do you know where that is?
Oh, you said it and I was like, oh yes.
It's where the date line meets the equator. So it's kind of the island of Tarawa. So if you look it up on a map, it'll be spelled Kiribati, but the T and the I make an S sound. They have 13 letters in their alphabet. So yeah, I lived there until I was about 9, and then we moved to Guam.
Oh,
And that's where I started ballet.
no way.
Yeah.
Cool. What brought your parents over there? Were they just into travel, or?
It was their work. Yeah, they worked, did international development work.
Yeah, and so then it kind of brought them all around, which what a fascinating way to be like grow up too.
I think so. Yeah, my mother's British and my father's American, and so there's just a blend of different cultures within our house too.
Yeah. Well, and then to be like involved in the type of work that they're doing, just to see that and also hear those perspectives. And I feel like it kind of expanded. Like you had no choice. I guess you always have a choice, but you had like no choice but to have this more expanded offering of compassion, just because of what you got to see, and obviously probably your parents' perspectives as well.
It definitely shaped a lot, for sure.
Yeah, as it does, but that just gives me a lot of perspective on you, because I just didn't know. I was like, oh, this is
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that until I start talking about my background. And I don't usually talk about it because it just doesn't typically come up. But
yeah. When did you move back to the States?
so I came to the States when I was about 15 for ballet, and my family was still living in the islands. So I lived with like I guess host families, you'd call it. So just like went to a ballet program in DC, so Washington School of Ballet.
Oh wow, I was gonna say, like, you were like die hard into ballet and like
It
dance.
was kind of my world for a very long time. Yeah, I went to a conservatory and got my bachelor in fine arts and danced for a little bit, and I got a stress fracture, so I injured myself, and it kind of impacted the way I think about what I wanted to do with my life. I started having this moment where I was watching all of my friends perform, and I had to sit out and kind of nurse an injury. And I was like, wow, I'm pouring so much into this craft and the sustainability of it. There was kind of a mismatch for me personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's where psychology kind of became something that was intriguing. Like I ended up going back to Guam and helping with my folks' nonprofit. And then on a whim, I applied to grad school in Seattle and got in. Yeah, I did like a Zoom interview and yeah, wrote a paper and yeah, came to Seattle. And I had never taken a psychology class in my life. Yeah.
And here I am, just
And
loving it.
now I'm doing a private practice and I really love it. I am obsessed with the heartfelt, meaningful work that it gets to be, and just being on the front lines of people's, stories, that you get to see so much resiliency, you get to see the glimmers of hope. My clients are always inspiring me, and I always feel like it grows my capacity for empathy, just learning and being human alongside of them in some way.
Absolutely. Well, and to be able to hold space for them, to be the tender. You're such, I think, a naturally like nurturing person. So to feel that tender, like, and I think that's appreciated when someone is bearing their heart and soul, and be able to have someone witness them and with open arms but it's exhausting, for someone that has a little bit of experience within this realm. I know that it can take a toll. So is that what got you into yoga eventually then too?
Yeah, that's a great segue. I did notice from the way that my folks worked and like kind of it created a bit of a culture of burnout.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a ton of concept or understanding around boundaries growing up. So I think that has been a process of trial and error of kind of finding my footing, of finding my own sense of safety and wellness and boundaries. But yeah, I did get pretty burnt out at one point, just within the work, and had to step away and tend to some things.
My first job out of college was youth suicide prevention, and
Oh wow, okay.
without which I'm sure you've heard of Teen Link.
I have heard of it, yeah.
So that was my first organization that I joined up with, and we helped on the helpline, and so they have like a peer-to-peer helpline that I was a supervisor for and was pretty regularly doing that. And then obviously was in the schools doing youth suicide prevention. But I remember even at a certain point, I was there for a few years, and I started to feel a little burnout from it. And it was, I think it was the regular callers that just, didn't necessarily want to heal, but that just to re-experience the trauma, I think just really tore on me, because like, I think in my mind, I was like, I want to be there and I want to support someone, but you can't make them heal, right? Like you can't force them into whatever journey they're having, and they have to take it at their own pace. And I think after doing that for a while, I was like, this is really hard for me to not kind of almost to not let this
kind of thing.
impact, like take this on as my own, and I know that. So that after that, I questioned, I was like, can I do this? Could I really do this long term? So I admire anyone that's within the field, just because I've seen it and know it's not easy work. It's definitely not. And it's when you are in it and you see the difference and the positive benefits of it, I think then you recognize why. You're reminded of the reward too.
And I think that's a challenge of if you're just getting a call or a moment where you're not seeing kind of those little steps along the way, it makes it tough because you're holding space. And in some ways, as an empath, I imagine feeling like a sponge where you're taking it in.
But I had no boundaries at that point. I had no idea what the boundaries. I didn't even know what like foreign concept. What does it mean to actually like not protect myself, but in a way to be able to like have somewhat of a restraint of what comes in and out. And I think at that it was always just very what a intuitive empath said, that she's like, you're very porous, like you're very like, kind of soak up like a sponge everything that's around you. But
which is an incredible gift when you know how to use it well and kind of develop those internal boundaries.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I think that is a skill. It's like working a muscle.
It is.
and
Yeah.
being willing to disappoint others and allow them to be upset with you from time to time. Not always pleasant,
You're like, I just want to make sure everyone's
especially if you're a
doing.
people pleaser.
Yes. Oh, we're covering people pleaser as well. So it's been, but I one of the reasons why I thought we should do this podcast. Because I think that a lot of people are in that boat and they don't necessarily
Mhm.
know how to handle all of it. And then also if you haven't been modeled, if you haven't been taught, it's like, how do you know something if you have no experience or knowledge around it? You know, like that's just impossible. And so I think it's important, but it's something that's definitely developed over time. And
How did you develop it? Can you kind of flesh that out a little?
yeah, I was like, this is supposed to be about you, Ashley.
I know, but I do want to hear this because I think it's important.
Yeah, no, I'm just joking around, but I do, how have this has been, I think it's developed over time. I think each like area of my life, like section of my life got developed at different points depending on what was going on. And honestly, usually a break in the barrier to the point to where it really hurt me or harmed me to the point to where I was like, I need to figure this out. Otherwise, this isn't sustainable. Like
Mm,
burnout with work. Like there is a certain point where I need to create boundaries with how much I'm working, how much I'm investing, and also the opportunity for me to give myself the freedom to have my own space too. So like
mhm,
that happened over time, but it was usually once I hit a breaking point to where I couldn't really come, like I had no other choice other than to change. And I
mhm,
am grateful that once I come to those moments, I definitely am I wise up. I'm like, okay, I can't do this
mhm,
anymore. So what do I need to do in order to make this something where I can actually feel joy in doing it or creating boundaries in order to just be able to support myself so that I'm able to live
mhm,
a healthy and balanced life. And I think yoga is a huge part of that. I've always recognized I need to fill up my own cup before I'm really able to give to others. So that's been a huge part of it. Relationships, I think, and also friendships, that's taken years. And I think even it like almost the willingness to understand that I deserve to just have just as much respect and
mhm,
kindness given to me as I would give to someone else. And I think that that was the reality check to be like, it's okay to ask for what you want. It's okay
mhm,
to set parameters of what's okay and what's not all right. Like it's okay to say that this is something for you to hold on to. I can't carry this for you anymore.
mhm,
And like I think over time and a lot of self work to be able to be in a point to where I'm comfortable having those conversations, which before I either would be so nice and so giving that I had
mhm,
nothing that or to be super strict and to be like, no, push immediately, shove everything away in a
mhm,
slightly hostile way. And I think that finding that in between has been
mhm.
probably my biggest lesson that I've learned when it comes to boundaries and really just, interpersonal relationships as a whole.
So
So,
many good things in that. One of the thoughts that I have is when were describing that rock bottom moment, or
um,
even that those moments when we hit rock bottom, because everyone's going to face those moments of collapse, right?
absolutely.
Where the sustainability piece isn't there, and um, you notice where things are off balance.
Mhm,
There
mhm.
is something about the collapse that actually shows you your limits. And I think that in of itself is a boundary.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
we actually listen to the teacher of the collapse,
Yeah.
how brilliant can that be? Where you can actually learn to
Mm, mhm.
rebuild, create scaffolding that actually supports you instead of um, demand so much of your time and your attention.
I love that you brought that up. And I don't think I recognized it at the time or even while I was explaining it, but I think that that's a perfect way to kind of reframe it because I do think those were moments where that needed to occur. They had to happen, but then can I still recreate? Can I almost create a more solid foundation for myself
Mhm.
that allows me to be able to show up in the way that I want to,
Mhm.
but from the like confines of what feels comfortable for me, and
And
I
that kind of makes me think too of having a mental savings account,
mm,
because if
mhm.
you're just expending all the time, there's so much expenditure, there's nothing to hold for yourself, right? You get to actually be really mindful when you think about the internal boundaries of what's mine, what's theirs, where do I begin and they end.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
there's something of containment and
Mhm.
differentiation when you have those healthy boundaries intact. They
Mhm.
can they can also adapt to the moment too. They don't have to be rigid and they don't have to be inflexible, but there are times when it's important for it to be sturdy, right? But there
And
can be sort of this pliability.
I love that. Well, and I think it's depending on who it is and
Yep.
how much I have to give, and I think
Mhm.
so much of that comes from my own self-awareness. Where am I at? How much can I offer at this point in time? And when do I need to take time to recharge? And that's okay to be able to do that and to not have an expectation that I need to be everything to everyone else, but also that I also need to be that for myself. And you know, growing up, I very much, it was like, if everyone else is okay, I'm okay.
Mm,
So that was
yeah.
the mentality. And so I think that, then you just spend years as that, as the motto.
And it's a script too. That
Yeah.
script kind of creates a precedent that if you don't follow that prescription,
Mhm.
then you might feel some shame or guilt if
Guilt.
you,
Very much
you
guilt.
know, don't let everybody
Take.
be prioritized essentially.
Yeah.
And you're deprioritizing yourself.
Yeah. And that was a constant theme until just within the last few years.
Mhm.
And especially becoming a mother and all of that layers on that gets, and then the mom guilt that comes along with that, but then also establishing a career and then creating a family and having a spouse and all these things that I felt in my mind what I needed to be the perfect wife. These are all the
Mhm.
things that are required for you to be a good mother and a good wife and have a good family. And that all got ripped down and like literally torn apart, and then to rebuild from that has been
Mhm.
really beautiful though, because I recognize I can have a lot, I can give, and I can still give so much. I actually have a very much a large capacity to give, but that I also can only give from what I'm willing to give myself first. And I just have to keep those a little bit more strict and just be mindful of them, because otherwise I fall into the lake and I can't, and I just recognize that about myself now.
Well, the thought that I have too is learning your rhythms and your rituals that offer sustainability to your life. I mean, I'm constantly tweaking that in my own personal life. And I think when you know that you're, a human being, not a human doing, and you only have so much energy and capacity for a given day, what are the things that lift you up and replenish you? The
Mm-hmm.
things that you're pouring back into your tank are just as important as, the ways you're exerting yourself.
Exactly.
I think of it like the inhale and the exhale. There's that ebb and flow. Something has to be coming inward to be able to pour out.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, you can only, the exhale will end at a certain point. So then you do have to pause and take, breathe
Mhm.
life into your own heart and soul and body. And, we are talking about that with yoga, and yoga is a huge piece of that for me and always has been. I think it was the first time in my life where I really started to gain more of that awareness and just that body mind connection in general. And from there, then I was like, oh, I have an intuition and I can listen to that,
Yes.
use that, I can utilize that for myself, and like in a compass of to guide me. And now it's like my guiding light in all that I do. It's like no matter what's going on or what decision I have to make, that's always where I start from. And I recognize if I start from that place, it always leads me. And it's literally the start of the morning. Like, okay, I have these things to do. How do I formulate them?
Mhm.
What can I give? What do I need to do for like food today? Like, how can I replenish myself? When
Mhm.
am I going to take a break? When am I going to go outside? When am I going to have me time? And
Mhm.
and that usually gets all kind of parsed through in my meditation in the morning, and that's
Love
always
that.
the way I start. So but I think it's give and take, and it's also just it changes. It's definitely molding and I think
Mhm.
adapting as time goes on too.
And one thought I have too is if you think of yourself as a complex being of your body, your soul, your mind, all these like layers to who you are as a person,
Yeah.
there are so many different boundaries and parameters. The body has a boundary too, right? Even when it tells you it's hungry or it's sleepy and it needs rest. And needs movement. There's so many things to our bodies that can be a template for how to design boundaries that are not only meaningful but sustainable.
Yeah. Because then if we're listening to ourselves, then there's only so many hours in a day, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to be able to, okay, I have to do these things, or there's certain things I need to do for myself or for the others around me or for my job or whatever. And so it's like, how do I fit this all in, but from a more easeful place? I think trying to shove as much as I can, even though people are like, Fair, I don't know how you do all the things that you do in life. And
I don't know how you do all the things you do, but I'm impressed.
a little bit.
I'm inspired.
But I'm much better than I used to be. So that's what I always say. I'm much better. And I do give myself permission to just be. And I don't think there was, a period of time where I wasn't doing that. And it definitely took its toll. And so after that, it was a very hard lesson, but it was a lesson I had to learn. Again, it was, another rock bottom moment, but it was like I had to learn that. And once, thankfully, hopefully, I try not to have to learn lessons more than once. So once I get that wake up call, that reality check, it usually sticks with me, and I usually will make definite shifts within my life and then a change from there.
One thing I do like about rock bottom moments is you realize where the ground is.
Yeah.
It's one of those invitations to actually put your feet under you in a different way and climb.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful. I love your metaphors every day.
I think you pull them out of me. I don't know what it is.
So I was like, oh, yes, love this. But it is, yeah, I've definitely, and each one has always been unique, and I'm grateful that they haven't been extreme, and I guess everyone has a different level of the capacity of what they can take. But because I have a lot of drug addiction in my family, and so I've seen really, really, really low rock bottoms, and
Yeah.
to where everything's been taken from them, and I don't think I could. Thankfully, I feel like I hear the whispers of my intuition, and I've said this to people before, and they're like, "This is really morbid for him," but I was like, "It's true." But I think your intuition speaks to you calmly and sweetly for as long as it can, until it eventually turns into a scream, and if you're not listening, it will become something more drastic. And I think it's usually when I get the stern talking to is usually when I'm able to like step back and be like, okay, here, like I recognize I'm pushing a limit and I need to adjust. But it doesn't always, and so I'm thankful. I don't think it's ever gotten too extreme, but I think everyone's ability and what they can handle is very different, and what they're willing to endure before they're willing to get really uncomfortable. Because I think once you do these things, again, you're doing them because they feel uncomfortable and you don't want to do them, and that's what you're familiar with, or what you've been in the program of doing, or what you've been in the routine of doing. And
we are creatures of habit. I think that there's sometimes, especially when people begin to heal or even make progress and get better, there's going to be those moments of panic or nostalgia for that safety comfort zone, even if it's hurting you.
Yeah.
Why do people go back to abusive relationships?
Yeah.
There's something about it, of the story that's being replayed. And there's lots of different types of abusive. Sometimes we have abusive relationships with ourselves. Self-sabotage is one of those things.
It's true. It is. I think, yeah, you just said that and it struck me, and I was like, because I've watched it so much with people around me and with myself, and it is like, why do you go back to the old way? And I thankfully, I think I've always been one of those people that I'm like, I made this change for a reason, so I'm gonna stick with it because I see the benefit of it. But it's never easy. And like you said, like there's that familiarity that brings people back, but then
and change is non-linear too. I think that's one of those things of knowing, okay, that internal self-awareness can be deeply enhanced by a therapeutic relationship where there's that empathy coming in, and someone also pointing out when a pattern is repeated.
Yeah.
in a loving way, right? Without shame, without any pressure.
Mhm, mhm. But noting it, and if you don't recognize it, then how do you change it?
Mhm.
So then,
Right. Because I think so many things are so subconscious until they become in our awareness.
mhm,
And
mhm.
it could be something that everyone sees around you except for you.
Yeah. Well, and now thinking about this too, in like a greater scheme and like with a brighter light, is that um if you notice it and then you see the pattern, but then you also
Mhm.
have to have the courage to be able to transform in a little way, like to be able to integrate,
Yeah,
be able
absolutely.
to pull it in, and then to be able to move forward. And I think that if you don't
Mhm.
know how and you feel kind of stuck, it can be really easy to just stay where you are too.
Absolutely. And I think what you said earlier about getting out of your comfort zone, in
Mhm.
some moments we have to take that risk to be courageous, right? And like lean into the storm instead of away from it. Because there's that self-protectiveness that sometimes comes up when changes around us.
Mhm. Mhm. Especially if we don't see the possibility of what could be,
Yeah.
right? Like there's light at the end of the tunnel, and if you don't know that it's possible, like even with, with setting boundaries, if you've never done it, or if you've never seen it work well, or that like when
Mhm.
it may have backfired if you've tried to do it in a different way, to be able to
Totally.
see the end result be something that was actually useful or that you want to recreate. It's really hard to be able to even envision how you could do it in the first place. And I think that's within
Mhm.
relationship patterns, within your own patterns within yourself, all of that. And then again, to like, if we wanted to apply it to boundaries, I think that that's very much a possibility there too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that sometimes boundaries aren't just about keeping people or things out. It's also about what do you want to invite in? What do you want to make more room for? And
Yeah.
how do you want to grow your capacity and grow your imagination for goodness?
Because we only have so much room, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's always what I remind myself of. It's like I want more, then sometimes you have to let go of what was in order to invite
Yeah.
in.
I love that perspective. And I think we also only have so much energy, and the things that we end up giving our energy to are
Yeah,
going to either regenerate something or deplete us.
that's so true.
So there's these drains, and then there's also those moments of getting filled up.
Yeah. And to see it, I think, yeah, I think coming back to this, like seeing the other side of it too, to be like,
Mhm.
if you've been drained by something, when is it like, and I am curious to kind of think of like your thoughts on this is like, when is that final straw? When is that moment where it's like no more? When is that rock bottom within a relationship, within a conversation, within a like within even a lifestyle or habit, or something along those lines
Well, it
too.
reminds me of that script that you brought in earlier, that example of I'm okay if everyone else is okay,
Yeah.
and how that can be somewhat unsustainable
Oh yeah.
if your boundaries are constantly being violated, to be able to kind of maintain that.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking about that's just a great example, and other people can kind of generate their own personal example around what are those inner scripts
Mm,
that
mhm.
maybe you're limiting beliefs that you're not consciously aware of. Like, can you drop into tuning into how you want to tweak it and reframe it so that there can be something a little bit more expansive?
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
metaphor that I think of is when you're remodeling or redesigning something, sometimes you have to um, blow out a
Also,
wall, right? That's in place so that you can see the view.
yeah.
And that's how you can look at boundaries as you're redesigning something internally
Mm,
so that
mhm.
you can make space and breathing room for the things that you do want more of in your life and the things that you want to keep out, because it actually um, allows for you to be more aligned with your values
Mhm. Mhm.
and connect to other people who are maybe in that space of learning too.
Exactly. Well, and to be able to make room for truly what you are the future, like if you
Mhm.
don't, if you're constantly living in what previously was, it's really hard to be able to see and to be able to create what you ultimately do want. And
Mhm.
you think about this within careers and making that change, or within a relationship or friendships, or even just I think, it goes across the board. It's just such an open door. But it's difficult. And I think the first step, I'm such a structural person. This is my Taurus moon coming up. The first step, I feel
Tell me.
like knowing the vision that you do see, what do you want? What are you creating? And then from there, it's like, okay, then break down into how you get there. And then that's
Mhm.
because
And
that's
breaking down the steps is sometimes harder because I think it's what you were talking about earlier of the change element of the fear response that can kick in.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, there's so much to, those moments of working it out and making the vision a reality.
Yeah.
That there's a slow movement to that sometimes, and sometimes it's speedy.
Mhm. Well, and to believe that it's possible, and that you deserve it, that you're worthy of it, that it can happen, that I think
Mhm.
sometimes dreams, literally or figuratively, are opportunities for us to see what's possible, what the future could hold. And then
Mhm.
from there, it's like taking action in order to achieve them is something that I'm grateful that I've always had a lot of hope, and I've always been very optimistic that I know if I really, really want something, that I can probably achieve it, in any capacity. And but that I know it's just going to take a lot of work. And so then that's
Yeah.
always, I'm like, okay, but I have to have the vision for what I want first. Otherwise, it's easy to get distracted and get pulled in a lot of other directions.
Because if you don't have a roadmap, you don't know where you're going.
Exactly. How do you get there if you don't know where you're
Yeah,
going?
you gotta have that GPS, that compass.
Use the well, and I do randomly drive around and just will like take random turns and do that sometimes. But I was like, and that is great.
A
But even
scenic route.
yeah, I know,
I
get
mean,
to
you all
see
need a
that.
scenic route once in a while, but there
Yeah.
is something to be said about getting that vision for
Mhm.
what you want to change.
Yes.
Because I think when we're so stuck in a pattern or a cycle,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's really hard not to get cynical or go into those shame responses of you can really go into a downward spiral pretty fast
Oh, for sure.
if you don't have that perspective of someone believing in you, especially if it's hard to believe in yourself, that
Yeah.
change can be possible.
That just made my heart ache a little bit too. 'Cause I
Mhm.
think so many people have struggled to believe that they can do something.
Yeah,
Right?
so too.
And then it's like, I haven't been able to do it before. I've messed this up and this hasn't worked out. So why would this work out? And then that's that
Mhm.
loop of, like you said, shame and regret, and resentment. And it's a vicious cycle that I just don't like.
Mhm.
It can ruin, I've seen it ruin lives. And I think that that's why I like
Yeah.
feel that so deeply.
And I also think that words become worlds, what you think about, what you kind of ruminate on, and what you believe.
Hmm.
It does get manifested in some way, for better or worse. And
True.
there's something about really honing in on those inner scripts, whether it be a limiting belief or something more expansive.
Yeah.
The type of mantra that you have, or the thing that you're kind of setting your gaze on,
Hmm. Hmm.
takes you one step further and closer to the thing you're looking at.
Yeah. And having those little reminders of
Mhm.
what is getting you there and why you want to be there, kind of coming back to that why. Simon Sinek talks a lot about that within his work. And I think it's, that's what keeps us focused because things
Mhm.
are inevitably going to go wrong. Like even with setting boundaries or whatever you're trying to do, there's probably going to be some pitfalls along the way. It's probably not
Right.
going to be peaches and cream the whole time. And not to reference peaches and cream as a song. Sorry.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that. I was like, I like peaches and cream. Yum. What's the song? Now you have to
Oh,
sing.
like
Are we in karaoke right now?
I know. How
Gotta
do
bring
I start singing? But I was like, now I'm tempted. Okay, wait.
it.
Dance break. You've never heard Peaches and Cream?
Never. I
Okay.
think we need to play it.
Oh, I'm looking it up. 112, that's who it is. No?
No, never heard the song in my life.
Oh my gosh, when did this come out?
I'm not from around here. You remember this, right?
Oh yeah. I was like, Ashley, this is like 2001. I graduated 2005. So I'm like, let me tell you what I want to do. Okay, we won't go into the song, but Peaches and Cream was a really great song back in the day. I'm gonna send it to you. And if you like R&B or hip hop in any way,
I love it. Yeah.
read it. This one guy like was like totally one of my friends. His name is CJ. He used to always sing, he's like, you know what I mean, peaches and cream, but he would like say it during class. He was like, you know what I mean, peaches and cream. And like every time I hear peaches and cream, I can only think of this song. Anyway,
Love it. Yay.
continuing on, I was really about to break out the song. I was like, Fair, you gotta stop. But there is this things aren't always going to be easy, and zoom back to the point that not everything's going to always be easy. So to have, even now thinking about this, to have joy, to have a reminder of what you're trying to do, and to infuse it with breaks every once in a while, I think is a good balance.
It's a sustainability practice. It's a boundary.
Yeah, to be able to say like, okay, I'm still doing all these things, but like tonight I'm going to like not think about this, and I'm going to like go do something else, or I'm going to refill my cup up in some way. Like we're talking about these rituals and different practices to keep us fulfilled, not only just within what we're trying to, the goals that we have, but also within just our heart space. So at least that's what I need. I know that's very important for me. What about you? Do you have things that you do to kind of refill yourself?
I have a lot of things that I do. I love a good conversation with a really close friend. I feel like that
Yeah.
when you can just be really vulnerable with someone and be totally seen and accepted, it's one of the best feelings to be
Totally.
really like deeply understood and known.
Mhm.
Um, I love yoga. That's
Mhm.
always kind of a recentering place of just kind of meeting on my mat and reconnecting and just getting back in my body, back in my breath, out of my head and into more of my heart.
Mhm.
It's really good.
Fantastic.
Um, Also, I love body work, like getting a massage or um, I think things like that can be really restorative, like that kind of safe touch.
Yeah.
And sometimes even just the simplicity of a walk outside and feeling the wind on your skin and kind of having a moment of mindfulness.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, there's little personal non-negotiables that I have that are really helpful, like having a little morning routine or a night routine and um yeah, eating nourishing meals is really important and getting good rest. I feel like sometimes it's the basics, but I
Totally.
think of it as you're tightening the loose screws so that the whole ship doesn't fall apart.
Yeah.
And I know there's small things, but those small things do add up and it can make all the difference. Like if I have my morning cup of coffee,
Mhm.
um, I feel really a lot better. My brain works better.
I think
Maybe other
after
people
that
don't need
point,
caffeine, but I am one who needs caffeine
oh, I
function.
didn't always drink coffee, and now it's like it's a ritual. It's like I
It's
want
a
to go
ritual.
have my cup, like, and then everything from that I think flows. It just everything
Oh
flows
yeah.
from there.
What's your cup of coffee?
Well, I was buying way too much, like actually going to like coffee shops was like my before my ritual, that I would actually like, okay, get ready, get out of the house, and then I'd go to a coffee shop, order coffee, and then like be able to drink it in my car and listen to music or a podcast or something like that. And that was like my start to the day. And then I was like, there, budgets exist for a reason, and this is definitely not something you need to be doing on a regular basis. And so I got like one of those single pours. And so
Oh,
I will
cool. Love
get
that.
the support locally. So then because I go to a local coffee shop, so I'll go get a bag of beans from them, have them grind them up, and then that way I can have my cup that way. But I've
Oh,
also been
I
drinking
love
mushroom
that.
coffee recently.
Oh, I've heard that's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Four Sigmatic is like actually really good mushroom coffee. I've had it for years. They have like
Mhm.
a pink one and like a defense one that's supposed to help you with like
Probably a lot better for you too.
yeah, and you don't get that spike of caffeine as much, but there's something about a cup of coffee that is just unmatched. And I just
I like a dry cappuccino, like just
ooh,
8 ounces and like
really,
very frothy cream. Like,
yes.
yeah, it feels European
Yeah,
something.
it's like a special treat,
Oh
right?
yeah, love it.
Oh, I love that. Wait, how did you establish like your morning and evening routines?
It's been a journey. I think it changes and adapts to the season that I'm in, but
Mhm.
um especially with the darker months, I tend to like some structure and routine as far as if there's some predictability in my day,
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel a lot more resilient to when things don't go the way I'm planning or there's these curveballs that hit.
Yeah,
Um,
having
I
some.
think it's been just a lifelong learning, and it still is. I'm still adapting it.
Yeah. What do you have right now that you like to do?
Um,
You have your
hmm,
morning coffee, but was there
yes,
anything else?
morning coffee. I also think like I like skincare routines. That can be like a little self-care thing.
100%.
Yeah, and just being able to kind of, I'm pretty tactile and just being able to smell something that feels really
Mhm.
organic and clean, like is really nice.
Yeah,
Just a kind of a self-care thing.
that's amazing. I love
Yeah,
that.
there's lots of little ones, but it's just, yeah, I don't know.
Has there been something you've recently kind of integrated that's made a difference,
Hmm.
or something you're currently doing that maybe you don't always do?
I think being being a person who has had to heal my relationship to food, I think making really good nourishing meals is a self-care thing too, just being able to enjoy the process of cooking.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's been a journey and also kind of a delightful thing too. And just um that's one of them.
Yeah, because then it's like being able to create something, that creative aspect, and then also to feel the nourishment of it. And then just,
Yeah, and there's something nurturing about being able to enjoy what you're eating, enjoy even the aesthetic of it. Like if it looks beautiful, like I think that can sometimes be,
oh,
there's
1000.
something meditative too about chopping. I think it can be like it's the somatic experience with the food you're working with.
Yeah. And the smells and how it starts to
Mhm.
come together. And as it,
I think very sensory.
yeah. And there's a presence. I think then you kind of tap in and you start to smell the different like herbs and how they all come together and then to create something new that it came from your fingers, I think is really beautiful. I love to cook. So I know.
There's so many different self-care things. So I feel like
Yeah.
comes back to boundaries, right? Of being able to attune to what does your body need in a given moment, listening to your needs and tuning into it can be a really powerful way of learning how to fill your tank.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really happy you brought that up because I think recognizing what you need and then allotting time for it is a boundary all in its own.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think that, when especially someone who's like, when I had a family, that was a really hard thing for me to like allocate time for because I just was so
Mhm.
used to having to constantly be and present for everyone else. Again,
Yeah.
that story that I had to be there for everyone else in order for them to feel safe. Um, and feel everyone else to feel comfortable. And also as an empath, if they feel comfortable, they're calmer. So then my nervous system is ultimately.
Mhm.
But now to establish these kind of non-negotiables for myself,
Mhm.
and then to invite other people into it to be able to recognize like, okay, this is still a boundary I want to hold, even though I'm going to allow someone into that space too. So like they
Mhm.
get access to it. And I'm not abandoning the boundary that I've set and what I'm doing. I'm just opening it up and allowing it to be a little more flexible.
I love that. So good.
It's hard to do though. I think that that
Mhm.
kind of interplay of the flexibility part, I think, is what is a struggle for most, to not be
Mhm.
hard and fast on it, but then also not to completely ignore it and your needs as well.
I mean, ignoring your needs is a very, I feel like culturally conditioned and celebrated sometimes, right?
Yeah,
And
it's
you
true.
can be so detached from almost we're kind of invited to become machines or compete with
Mhm.
computers. And we are
Very much like
truly people
that.
with
Mhm.
needs for sleep, with needs to recharge, with needs for connection.
Yeah.
And when these kinds of vats are not filled up, you're
Yeah.
running on empty. It
Oh,
is a recipe for burnout.
mhm. And it's not like we've talked about this a lot, but it's like it's not sustainable. At some point you will break down.
Yeah.
So like at what point do you recognize and to be able to take a step back and just,
Mhm.
evaluate? I think that's so
Yeah. I mean, I also think too, if you can think of your life like a marathon versus a sprint, you will allocate your energy differently based on wanting to kind of go the long haul versus the short like spurts and fits and starts.
Yeah, it's true. Has this ever come up in your personal life to where you've kind of ran up against something where you've been sprinting for too long, or maybe
Mhm.
even those adjustments you've made, or what was the like realization that life is more
Yeah.
fun?
I mean, I can share a personal story. Um, I think that one of the things that comes to mind when you talk about that is um, right after grad school, I was pretty exhausted. I had an internship where it's not paid, so you're working basically a full-time job for no money in the city of Seattle, which is really unsustainable.
Yeah.
Uh, and um, after I graduated, I was working multiple jobs, and then I had a really tragic thing happen in my family. My youngest brother um, was out dancing, and yeah, was with his boyfriend at the time, and they were walking in a crosswalk, and it was the right of way, and um, yeah, this driver uh, ran him over,
Oh my.
and he pushed his partner out of the way, but didn't get out in time,
Mhm.
and it shattered his pelvis. It shattered like all different parts of yeah, his physical body was really in shambles, and we really thought he was going to die because he was in a coma, and the doctors were doing lots of extreme measures, and it was very, very traumatizing for me as a person, and my entire family was pretty wrecked by it. And
How could they not be?
I think that was one of my rock bottom moments, was something so tragic happening to someone that I really loved out of the blue, when you just can't anticipate that kind of thing. And so when I think of the converging events of just being so exhausted and depleted, um, I think I just had a moment of reevaluating what's important to me and how fragile and precious life is. Um, and that was actually one of the catalyzing events that put me into a yoga teacher training, because I was so burnt out and I needed a little bit of a reprieve while my brother was in recovery and my family was in a lot of pain. Um, so coming back home to my body was like a way of coming back to life. Uh, and so, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think those burnout moments of what's sustainable, um, what's meaningful, what's life giving, all of those questions started to kind of bubble up for me, and I started to change the way I think about life and how fast I was going and why the rush.
And also, I think it sounded like there was a moment in time where like you couldn't take any, like you could do no more, and I think when you're
Mhm.
exhausted and physically exhausted and mentally exhausted from all of these different
Yeah.
occurrences that happened, it's like you had to give yourself permission to just solely focus on you. And that was
Mhm.
like challenging, but it was a
It
boundary.
actually felt, for me, I had some internal moments of feeling like, is this selfish when other people need something and I'm like taking a pause? But I actually felt like it was necessary.
Absolutely.
And I couldn't really do anything to speed up my brother's recovery process. And I think there was a moment of kind of surrendering to, I want him to be well. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. Like, there is something of tragedy kind of really wakes us up. Those rock bottom moments, you find the floor in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and like you said earlier, to be able to find your own footing, to be able to
Yeah.
body and to be like, okay, now I have to restructure how I'm doing things
Mhm.
because this has rocked me so much. This has shattered a part of my world that I
Yeah.
can't continue on as you were before.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think trauma does shape us. I mean, those scars, they will always be sensitive to the touch,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
even when we heal the wounds, right?
Because they're still a part of us and the memories don't fade, they're
Mhm.
still present even if we've healed, and it's not to say there's still as much pain when it comes up,
Mhm.
but it's definitely molded a part of you and how you view the
Yeah.
world. Mm.
It also, some of the conversations I had with my brother after he started recovering was he was really vulnerable with me one day and just shared that he had to relearn so many things, like had to learn how to walk, had to rely on others. And I think the vulnerability of what it puts your body through um, kind of reminds us how fragile and vulnerable we actually are.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And I think how short life is too, or
how
how
short that is, yeah.
mm,
But it also just gave me a lot of respect for his capacity to keep going. And I saw who my friends were in that time too. I saw who the people were who went out of their way to kind of cover a shift for me so that I could go be with my family during that time of need. And um, the people who made a meal and brought it over, like just little things went a long way in that time. And just even a kind word or a smile or a hug or some of those moments of just really empathizing and really being present, I think I appreciated it more than ever. And it just showed me what matters.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think those moments, especially when we're feeling really vulnerable, when we're in a
Mhm.
vulnerable space, and for people to witness us and hold space for you, because I think you're someone that's always doing that for others and when it question and a heartbeat to do it for them, but then to receive that and be okay receiving that, I think then
Mhm.
that's what galvanizes relationships, right? That's what really strengthens connection, is to be able to be okay to receive and also recognize who is giving in that way to us, even when
So good. Yeah.
it's not always as intuitive or natural to feel, to receive in that way.
And sometimes we need people to give us permission,
Yeah.
especially if it's not natural. Or, if it's even culturally not learned. Like there's got to be those moments of, yeah, human connection, like what you just shared.
It's I am very much a giver, and this is like my era of trying to receive more. And so when you're
Yeah.
but it's so true, because then
Mhm.
it's like no one can do life completely alone, right? It's impossible.
Right. And I think it's a two-way street, right? We learn from each other, and your healing journey is going to inspire someone who's maybe in a different part in their journey, and
Yeah.
vice versa, right?
Mhm.
When we talk about our stories, it invites others to recognize their own experience and tap into feelings that might be similar or different.
Mhm. Mhm. 1000%. How do you feel like now at this point in your life? Are you and your brother still very close?
Um, he is my baby brother, and will always be. But we live in totally different states, and so we don't talk super often, but we talked, yeah, a few days ago, and it was really lovely. So,
That's amazing. Was there like one or two things that kind of came from that time frame within your life that have stuck with you or has continued to stick with you now?
hmm, I think the biggest thing was I was really appreciative for my therapist. Like just being able to have a safe place to be really messy and vulnerable and angry. I think being angry about the situation was pretty raw emotion. And um, I think being able to be honest with my safe people. And I think I just learned to lean into others in a different way
Mhm.
because I was forced to.
You don't have a choice, right?
Yeah. You don't have a choice when you're going through it. I think when you're in survival mode, you really do rely on the people that are willing to show up and be in your corner.
And to really support you and love you, I think, in a way
Yeah.
without any expectations of
It
anything.
also shows you what you're made of. I think challenging situations actually really invite resiliency to show itself.
Mhm, mhm.
And more often than not, we surprise ourselves with what we're capable of handling.
So, yeah. Because I think, yeah. Well, and then for that to be even a door that got open for you to be able to incorporate yoga and like to be able to become a teacher. And then now, like that being a part of your practice and like a part of your own self-care and everything in between. It's like,
Mhm.
obviously, like you said, never would wish that upon anyone. Obviously, if the circumstances were different, it would have been better. But like, life has a crazy way of taking those on those twists and turns.
Mhm.
There's a fire truck coming by, so I was going to
The
turn and
fire truck. Oh no.
no, it's okay. But I'm so grateful for our conversation, and
Me
I'm so
too.
appreciative that you were so vulnerable and just willing to share kind of all these things. And
We went all over the map, didn't we?
ah, we always do. I told you I was like,
I was like, I thought this was a conversation about boundaries and we went places.
oh, but I think it's because I think, that actual application of boundaries, because I think some
Yeah.
have
And
this,
just real life, because I do think real life is so messy sometimes.
ah,
And it's one thing to strategize about the best method in your boundary, toolkit, but actually seeing how it works for you in the moment is way more valuable.
absolutely.
And I think you're right. Stories are what people connect to.
So it's like, and we definitely went into different stories about what were
Mhm.
times where like how did we learn about boundaries, and so much I think boundaries get in reference or like are often presented in this way of how we're having it with other people, but I think even boundaries within ourselves, and to be able to have these moments and these rituals and things that we're doing to help replenish us
Mhm.
allow us to be able to show up more for everything else that we're doing within life. And so and I think we talked about that pretty extensively, which I think is really helpful too. And it's definitely not
Mhm.
necessarily what I had in mind, but whatever. I'm
I
okay with that.
liked it.
We got to sing Peaches and Cream too. So it was a win. I think it was a
Yeah,
win.
you had a lovely little yeah, karaoke moment.
Golly. I was expecting to do that. I was like, oh my gosh, I love this song. I haven't heard it. I'm gonna add it to my playlist now. But I appreciate you. I adore you. And
Appreciate you, friend. Thank you so much for your time and for having me on your podcast. This is so fun.
absolutely thank you for being here. And where can people find you if they wanted to connect with you after?
People can find me on Psychology Today if you just type in my name, Ashley Zimmerman, or I also have a website. It's embodied-living.org. And yeah, you can also find me at Shefa Yoga. I'm offering a vinyasa flow at 4:30 on Saturdays now. So come hang in the community and say hi.
Yes, please do. And you're also on Instagram as well, right?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I want to say it's bravestories.reimagined.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
And I'll put it in the show notes too, because
Okay, beautiful.
thank you again. And
Thank you, friend. Appreciate it.
yes, I was like, and thanks for everyone for listening in. I hope this was useful just to be able to have these listen into this conversation, and also to how this applies to you and how you can really integrate boundaries within your own life. If anything, for an opportunity to be able to have these rituals, have these practices, so that you can continue to show up for people in a more sustainable and loving and compassionate way. So
Mhm.
I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, see
Um,
you the next time.
bye.